What happens when a prime minister tells the world's most powerful nation that threats won't work anymore? Mark Carney just gave us the answer. And it's unfolding in New Delhi right now. Breaking tonight, Canada's strategic independence just became undeniable. India didn't wait. They committed. Tensions are escalating across North America tonight. Trump threatened 100% tariffs if Canada signed deals with China. But instead of backing down, Ottawa accelerated partnerships with the world's fastest growing democracy. And what they're signing in March will change everything you thought you knew about Canadian foreign policy. Everyone believed Canada would retreat under American pressure. Wall Street expected Carney to cancel the China agreement and apologize. Analysts assumed Ottawa would return to quiet diplomacy and U.S. dependency. They were all utterly incorrect. New Delhi, last weekend. India's High Commissioner to Canada, Dinesh Patnaik, made a statement in an interview that should concern everyone betting against Canadian sovereignty. Mark Carney will likely visit India the first week of March. They're signing deals on uranium, energy, minerals, and artificial intelligence. Translation: Canada just told Washington that intimidation tactics are obsolete. And what happens next reveals exactly why middle power coalitions are reshaping global trade while American threats lose their bite. Dear viewers, between Carney's Davos speech in January and this India visit in March, something extraordinary is happening in Canadian foreign relations. Trump pushed too hard. Carney said no. And India, patient and strategic India, became the partner every nation watching American chaos started calling first. Let me show you what's really happening here. Remember Davos? January 2026. Mark Carney stood in front of the global elite and did something unusual. He got a standing ovation. Not the polite kind you see at these summits, but the kind that happens when someone says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody's had the guts to articulate. He told them the old rules-based order is finished. Done. And he said middle powers like Canada need to start building coalitions for something fairer, something that actually works. The speech went viral, and here's why. It wasn't just eloquent, though it was that too. It went viral because Carney looked at the room full of the world's most powerful people and said the thing nobody else would say out loud. The emperor has no clothes. American reliability is gone. Middle powers must lead now. 48 hours after that speech, Canada announced an agreement with China slashing tariffs on electric vehicles and canola, opening $7 billion in export markets. The goal? Double non-U.S. exports over the next decade. Trump's response came Saturday. He threatened 100% tariffs on Canada if the China deal stood. Here's what matters. Carney didn't blink. He responded that Canada respects its USMCA commitments to avoid free trade agreements with non-market economies, but that bilateral deals reducing specific tariffs are perfectly legal. Then he did something that should terrify anyone who thought threats still worked on Ottawa. He scheduled a trip to India for the first week of March. Let's talk about what Carney's signing in New Delhi, because this isn't some symbolic handshake tour. This is strategic infrastructure for Canadian independence. First, uranium. Canada and India are finalizing a 10-year, $2.8 billion uranium supply deal. That's not a small contract. That's a decade-long commitment positioning Canada as India's primary nuclear fuel supplier, while New Delhi expands civilian nuclear energy to meet massive growth in electricity demand. Canada's Energy Minister Tim Hodgson is in India this week laying groundwork for Carney's visit. When asked about the uranium deal, Hodgson said, Canada is happy to sell uranium under the Canada-India Nuclear Cooperation Agreement as long as India follows International Atomic Energy Agency safeguards. He added, we know that India is a major nuclear country with major plans to grow its civilian use of nuclear energy. Translation: Canada sees India's energy expansion and wants to own that relationship for the next decade, but uranium is just the opening move. Patnaik confirmed that Carney will sign smaller agreements on nuclear energy, oil and gas, environment, AI, and quantum computing, plus deals on education and culture. Between Hodgson's visit this week and Carney's trip in March, both countries will announce agreements on energy and mining, with critical minerals and LNG transactions being the most prominent. Hodgson was blunt about the strategy. We need to focus on economies that are large and growing. India squarely falls into that category. India is a growing user of critical minerals that Canada can supply. Large and growing. Remember those words, because they explain everything about Carney's approach. While Trump threatens nations for signing deals, Carney identifies where growth is happening and positions Canada to supply it. One strategy is based on fear, the other is based on math. There's something else happening here that makes this partnership even more important. Carney isn't just opening new doors, he's fixing ones that got slammed shut. Justin Trudeau made an accusation in 2023 that poisoned everything between Canada and India. He said the Indian government was involved in the killing of Sikh separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar on Canadian soil. India denied it. Relations froze. Trade talks that had been moving forward just stopped. India denied the claims. Diplomatic relations froze. Trade talks that had been progressing for years simply stopped. Carney inherited that mess and immediately started fixing it. Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the G7 summit on Carney's personal invitation last year. Several of Carney's ministers have traveled to India since then. India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman are expected to visit Canada very soon. India's National Security Advisor will visit Ottawa next month for regular intelligence exchanges and security discussions. On the Nijjar case, Patnaik said there's a court case ongoing in Canada involving 4 people accused of the murder. If evidence emerges that Indians were involved, India will take action. That's diplomatic language for, we're letting the legal process work while we rebuild everything else. This is what adult diplomacy looks like. You don't let one unresolved issue destroy an entire strategic relationship. You compartmentalize, you continue talking, and you build momentum in areas where agreement is possible, while difficult matters work through proper channels. Contrast that with Trump's approach. One disagreement becomes total economic warfare. One slight becomes categorical threats. It's the difference between building coalitions and burning bridges. Now here's where the India relationship becomes transformational for Canada. They're starting formal negotiations for a comprehensive economic partnership agreement in March. That's what Patnaik said. Canada and India agreed back in November to restart trade talks that had been dead for 2 years. Now they're moving at breakneck speed. Patnaik said that within a year of starting formal negotiations, a SEPA pact could be signed. 1 year, from negotiation launch to signed agreement. That's lightning speed in trade diplomacy, and it signals something crucial about the current moment. Both countries are moving with what Patnaik called a sense of urgency after 2 years of stalled talks. There's a renewed impetus to move fast to make sure countries hit by U.S. tariffs forge their own path. Listen to how Patnaik framed the strategic context. Now we are living in a world where the natural rules-based order, which gave certainty to the world, is not functioning. We should work together to have an agreement that protects us from the vagaries of the international order. The vagaries of the international order, that's diplomatic speak for American chaos. And the solution isn't to beg Washington for stability. The solution is to build agreements with other stable, growing economies that protect mutual interests regardless of what happens in the White House. India gets this urgently because they're experiencing the same pressure. India and the EU are expected to announce Tuesday the conclusion of protracted negotiations for a free trade pact. New Delhi is building multiple pathways to growth that don't depend on American permission or American stability. Step back and look at what Carney's doing here. It's the same approach across every partnership. China, slash specific tariffs on EVs and canola. Open $7 billion in markets. Respect USMCA boundaries while maximizing bilateral opportunity. India, sign uranium supply for a decade. Formalize critical minerals partnerships. Launch comprehensive trade negotiations. Reset diplomatic relations damaged by predecessor. Australia, Carney visiting in March to address Parliament, according to Prime Minister Albanese. Another middle power, another opportunity for coalition building. The pattern is identical. Identify large growing economies, offer Canadian resources and stability, build long-term supply relationships, formalize through trade agreements. Repeat, this isn't opportunistic deal-making. This is systematic construction of a post-American dependency framework for Canadian prosperity. Carney said he wants to double non-U.S. exports over the next decade. He's not saying that for applause lines. He's building the architecture to make it happen, and here's what makes it brilliant. Every single one of these partnerships is legal under USMCA. Every agreement respects Canada's existing commitments. Trump can threaten 100% tariffs all he wants, but Canada isn't violating any treaty obligations. They're simply maximizing every legal opportunity to diversify. What can Trump actually do? Blow up USMCA? That hurts American manufacturers as much as Canadian ones. Impose tariffs anyway? Canada retaliates? and American consumers pay the price while Canadian exports shift to India, China, and Europe. Carney's built a position where American threats become increasingly empty because Canadian alternatives become increasingly real. Let me be direct about what's happening. When Carney signs those agreements in New Delhi the first week of March, he's not just buying uranium supply or opening mineral markets. He's demonstrating that Canada can pursue strategic interests independently, that middle power coalitions can provide economic security that American partnership no longer guarantees, and that countries willing to lead rather than follow are shaping what comes after American dominance. India's Patnaik referenced Carney's Davos speech specifically when explaining the urgency of current negotiations. The speech that declared the old order finished is now the framework guiding concrete partnerships. Vision is becoming policy. Rhetoric is becoming signed agreements. The uranium deal alone represents $2.8 billion over 10 years. But the real value isn't the dollar figure, it's the decade-long commitment. It's India looking at Canada and deciding that Ottawa is a reliable partner for critical energy infrastructure over the next 10 years, regardless of what happens in Washington. That's the diplomatic equivalent of a vote of confidence in Canadian sovereignty. And when other nations see India making that bet, when they see China signing tariff reductions, when they see Australia inviting Carney to address Parliament, they start wondering if maybe the safe bet isn't American alignment anymore. Maybe the safe bet is coalition with the Canadians who respect agreements, deliver resources reliably, and don't threaten economic warfare every weekend on social media. Canada faces a choice right now: return to quiet dependency on an increasingly unreliable American partner, or build the coalitions Carney described in Davos and turn middle power cooperation into the foundation of Canadian prosperity. Carney's choosing the latter, and with every trip to New Delhi, every agreement with Beijing, every speech to parliaments across the Pacific, he's making that choice irreversible. Trump threatened 100% tariffs if Canada signed deals with China. Canada signed the deal anyway and added India to the list. What happens when threats stop working? The threatened party stops listening, and everyone watching starts wondering if maybe they should stop listening too. March will tell us how serious Canada is about independence. Not through speeches, through signatures, through uranium contracts and trade frameworks and critical mineral partnerships that last a decade. The old rules-based order is finished. Carney said so in Davos. But something's replacing it. And if you're watching closely, you can see it taking shape in agreements signed between Ottawa and New Delhi, while Washington threatens from the sidelines. Dear viewers, Canada is writing a playbook for middle power independence in real time. Other nations are watching, some are already following. And the country that figures out how to thrive without American permission might just become the model everyone else copies when the threats start flying in their direction. If you found this analysis valuable, this channel exists to show you how Canada is navigating the most volatile period in modern geopolitical history. The conclusions are mine, you decide what it means, but the pattern is undeniable. Canada's not retreating. Canada's building. And in March, we'll see exactly how serious they are.